Welcome to the third installment of the Student Engagement Webinar Series. Today we are joined by Holly Clark and Lisa Highfill for an amazing discussion on Hyperdocs. Over to the right, you'll find our chat box. Please feel free to introduce yourself, tell us where you're from, and ask any questions that you might have as these wonderful ladies share some of their biggest secrets. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to them for an awesome presentation.
Well, now that we're sharing our best secrets, I think, Lisa, you should definitely go. No, I'm kidding. Thank you for joining. I'm Holly Clark. I am the author of the Google Infused Classroom and soon to be Chromebook Infused Classroom, although Chromebook Infused Classroom is available online, so that is already out. And I live in San Diego, California. At some point in this webinar, you're going to see one of my dogs, so just prepare. You can make it a drinking game if you want, like they do in that on the Bravo TV series. But and Lisa, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Lisa Highfill, and I'm an instructional technology coach. I'm an integration coach is our new name this year, integrating, kind of not focusing on all the tech. I love to focus on lesson design here in Pleasanton, California, which is the San Francisco Bay Area. And just really excited to be talking to you about good lesson design today.
And so people over in the chat are saying where they're from, and we have mostly East Coasters and one Southern California gal. So shout out to SoCal. But also, you guys, I noticed that you're starting to put your Twitter handles. That would be great. I'm going to go back in and follow people. So please put your Twitter handles, and we can't wait to have you interact. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen, and Lisa and I are going to take turns talking about certain things. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm not going to be able to see it, so I'm just going to hope that what I am talking about is on the screen. And Lisa, you can let me know if it's not. Yes. And so the first thing that I want to talk about is really, so my whole kind of series is around the Infused Classroom. And one of the things that I'm trying to get people to rethink is the idea of the Infused Classroom student. And so Lisa, can we see this graphic?
Yeah, I can see it. You're up.
Perfect. And what I'm trying to do lately is I'm really trying to get people to talk first about the student and what can the student do with the device in the classroom, whether it's an iPad, a Chromebook, Microsoft, what are they called? The Microsoft machine, and Surface. And no matter what it is, how can we put students at the center of their learning? So I kind of made this graphic to make it a little more edible, so to speak. And one of the first things that we want to be able to help students do now that they have the devices is really to activate their curiosity. And that's where I'm going to start today, is how can we activate their curiosity? But before I go into that, I want to just show you or talk about the other 3 steps. And one of them is managing and keeping track of learning. So what we mean by that is maybe something that's in a Hyperdoc, which Lisa is going to talk about. And or it could be curating your learning or just knowing where you are in the learning process so that you understand who you are as a learner and you can grow in that way and not have your teacher be in charge of everything that you do. Using your devices now as a student to apply and demonstrate knowledge, and finally be able to add that reflection part into our learning to make it full circle. Something that often, at least in U.S. schools, we forget because we're rushing through standards and we're trying to make sure that we get everything that we're supposed to be hitting. And sometimes when it comes to reflection, we leave that out. But that's really the full circle of learning. So we're going to use the first one, which is activate curiosity. And I'm going to talk about something that's called right now, a multimedia text set or a learning board, a choice board. People are calling it different things. And if I scroll on this, this is something, if we're going to go into a unit on immigration, this is something made by, Lisa, did you make this?
Yeah, I did with Scott Padway, my coaching partner. Yes.
Right. I do remember that Scott was involved with this. Yeah. So what this is something that I would pass out to students, and I would say to them, you can attack this board in any way that you want, but I'm going to give you maybe, and I don't know, Lisa, if you do this, but I generally give like 8 minutes. And I say to them, watch what you want, go where you want. And it's really fun to watch as people partake in one of these choice boards because they go in different places. And then as a teacher, as they go to maybe explore and watch a video on something, because they don't have their headphones on, I know where they are, and I might walk over and kind of interact with them and be like, "Oh, this is a good part, huh?" Or "What do you think about what's happening there on the boat?" And so I can interact and be the guide on the side, and the kids can be learning about immigration before we jump in. And so this really activates curiosity. And it's actually one of my favorite ways to activate curiosity. But Lisa, in her wisdom, once told me, or told probably the people who take the online course, that you can overdo, you can have too many. Like, if this works for you, don't do it for every unit. And I found myself starting to do that recently. So I've pulled back on that. But what makes this, and Lisa, do you want to say anything about a tech set like this that maybe I haven't talked about?
Well, it's exactly along what you started with. It's that you're trying to get kids to be curious about what they're learning about. And if we always tell them where to go, what to read, what to do, we're not giving them that opportunity. So I always love to say that if you want kids to be curious, then give them something to be curious about. So it's really designed to be, I call it like a hidden chocolate cake. There's all these little nuggets of goodness spread throughout. And it offers that choice for kids. Everyone's a different kind of learner.
And then I like at the end where it says, "What do you wonder?" Now that you've gone through some of these stories and watched some videos and read some tidbits of information, what do you wonder about immigration in our country? There's also this really great one that I believe was also done by you and Scott, if I'm right.
Yes.
And Scott is Lisa's coaching partner. He's a super talented teacher, someone great to follow. By the way, you could put that in our chat, Lisa, his handle. And this one, I mean, you listen to some stories of refugees, you start to understand maybe the complexities of being a refugee, and it's just another choice board. I've taken this exact board and I've taken out what's in here, and I put in other things. Like I do one on Generation Z where there's things that make you laugh, things that make you wonder. And so when we're done, now that students have kind of gone and activated that curiosity, where we want to start in that learning journey, or that second part of the graphic that we saw, is we want to let them to understand where they are in the learning journey. And this is where Screencastify can come in. So if I were to come over to Screencastify in my extensions, I can have the students record the screen, and as they're recording the screen, they can tell me which of these 3 boxes do they love the most, what really taught them something, and which ones made them question or rethink something. And so I could actually get to their thinking. And I think that's one of the really valuable parts of having technology in the classrooms, that we need to make student thinking and understanding visible to us. And visible doesn't mean they're going to draw it out. Visible just means visible so that we understand it. And Screencastify gives us this great way to do that. So all the kids would have to do is maybe choose the browser tab. And when they choose the browser tab, they get tools that will come up in a second in the bottom. And you can see it's actually recording me right now. And I could come over here with one of these pins and I could say, well, I really loved this box on context because it really made me think about these global refugees and whatever. And then I can use some of these tools to really point out to my teacher what I was thinking. So this is where I think that are starting. This isn't a Hyperdoc. This is a multimedia text set where we can use Screencastify to make that strong. Now I'm going to stop this and it's going to want to play it. So I'm just going to have to just stop the thing that comes up in a second. There we go. Okay. And I'm going to come back over and I'm going to stop sharing. And I want to talk for a second about this multimedia text set that we just saw. And what's important about this multimedia text set and why we're not calling it a Hyperdoc is because it is a doc with links, but it is a doc that's made for consumption. And students are consuming, and maybe they, in that consumption, might have some byproducts of that, which would be maybe there's a little critical thinking, but they're not creating anything. They're really not communicating anything until that end part where they might use Screencastify. And they're really not collaborating. So why you could argue that there might be some critical thinking. We're not getting at all of the 4 C's. And this is where Lisa gets to hear me describe the difference between a Hyperdoc and a multimedia text set. And in a Hyperdoc, you actually have all of the 4 C's, and it's not about consumption. It's about really activating curiosity and inquiry, but taking it to a step further, and also having this really organized way for the students to progress through their learning, which really takes us to that second part of the graphic of like understanding where you are in the learning journey. So Lisa is going to take you now into an actual Hyperdoc so that you can learn the difference between the two. And then we have some resources for you at the end so that you can look at exactly what we were just using. And she's going to take it over now.
Actually, Holly, I've been flopping the link in there. I've already done it twice.
Okay.
For resources, I see there's a lot of people on the document. So that was a great description of a multimedia text set. And I want to give a little preface to what a Hyperdoc is and how they came about. Like, why would you make these? And why are they a little bit unique? In our district, we got a ton of Chromebooks right around when testing online happened, when we were required to do online testing. I thought, finally, we get devices and it's for testing. So we thought we want to really maximize this investment, and we want to start to use them in the classroom, but it was really challenging for teachers because they had a bunch of URLs or cool websites they liked. And that was a struggle to try to integrate, these standalone websites with how they teach, with really good lesson flow and lesson design. And so we created these documents, and I'll start to share those now with you. There we go. So that you can, let me just make sure I get that. So that you can see what it looks like. How's that, Holly? Am I good? Am I on?
Yep, you are on.
Good. Now, this is a Hyperdoc that is created on a Google Doc, just because I wanted to show you our template. The lesson cycle, or the flow of this lesson, is following this cycle of learning with engage. Of course, we start with an engaged lesson, and then it goes to explore. Students explore some content. Then they get the explanation of what's the topic is about, and then they apply their knowledge. So that explore, explain, apply is one thing that really sets it apart. In terms of that multimedia text set that you just saw, that was really just the explore section of a lesson. So you're getting kids to be curious and explore content on their own. We always have that in a Hyperdoc before we get to the explanation. So often we were seeing that kids were coming into the classroom and just kind of waiting to be told what to do. And we wanted to build some of that agency in kids. And so we give them the opportunity to see if they can make meaning of the lesson before you tell them what it is. So in this example, it's a manifesto. I didn't want to tell them what a manifesto was. I wanted them to come to that conclusion before I got to the explanation there. Now, this is loaded up with links so often, and I just watched a lesson just this week in a classroom. The teacher showed a video, and she showed it once, and everyone was like half paying attention, half not paying attention, and they all wanted to see it again. I could hear the kids talking about it. So for me, it's so important that I give the video to the kids, and I link it right there on the Hyperdoc. Although when I deliver this lesson, I say, don't play the video now. I'm going to do it up front. We're going to do this whole class, but you can re-watch this later. And I think that's a really important part of really adding in these little pieces to your lessons. I also put the text of the video. It's so important that we reach all kinds of learners here, and some need to hear it, some need to see it. And I think that's really important. We put on closed captioning with the video, but it goes really fast. And so if I want kids to examine the meaning of the video, I'm going to take the time and actually type it up and give it to them then and have them annotate there. You can see as we go through the Explore, it's on tech and off tech, and that's a really important part of a Hyperdoc. It doesn't mean that you just give the lesson to them and they just take off and go running with it. It means that I guide this lesson. We would do the engage together, and then they would explore these resources so they can sort of begin to make meaning about this Alan Watts video of What Do You Desire? Highly recommend you watch that video. It's incredible. But then I had them move into their writer's notebooks for what in these readings inspires you. What are you now thinking about in terms of the theme in each of those resources? We get to the explain portion where I say, now you're going to make your own manifesto, and they're going to read through examples and post your ideas. I'm still not quite telling them what a manifesto is, but by showing them all these samples, I do ask, what are the elements of a manifesto? So they're not such passive learners. I'm trying to, get them thinking, spur on that cognitive load there, and pull that knowledge from that exploration time. And then I can sort of gauge into that formative assessment. Do they get it? Do they not get it? And adjust with my explanation. The last part of a lesson is very important, and that's the apply piece. It's the so what, now what. So we know what a manifesto is, now what. And this is about the students making their own manifestos. They turned them into this class slide deck, and instantly we were sharing them with each other. And so it was quite an impactful lesson. This is actually, we did this with the 10th grade English class lesson. Hyperdocs don't always have to be done on a Google Doc though. Here's one, it's a PSA Hyperdoc. And I highly recommend using this one too if you ever want to do PSAs, public service announcements with your students. I don't want to have them come in and sit down and say, all right, guys, today you're making a public service announcement, and here's the instructions. I want them to make meaning of it. I didn't even want to tell them what they are. I built each part of this on a different slide. And so they started off exploring, and they look at 3, I really limited their choices here. They looked at 3 really good PSAs. I highly suggest you also limit them and you preview them first, because there's some PSAs on YouTube that are not appropriate. And then they talk about what they noticed. Then they get into the explain, and these are the elements of a PSA that the kids then work through and highlight which boxes of these elements are most important when they go to create their own. You can see then comes the, I have them re-explore, and then the application. And they plan out their PSA. Here are the instructions for what I'd like you to do with this. And then the last part, we have the students turning in their work on a Wakelet. And so it was pretty amazing to get the kids to be able to collaboratively turn their work in, and then have that authentic audience right away. And you can see all of their PSA videos. My page is loading a little slow. Wakelet is an amazing tool to be collecting those documents. And it was just really easy for kids to then go in and explore them on their own. You can see it's easy to scroll through. I call this my digital bulletin board, and it really makes for a very quick, easy way for me to have kids sharing their work. Now, this was a middle school Hyperdoc. I wanted to show you one last one, and this is an elementary one for math. And this teacher, Nadine Gilkison, you may know her style if you know her Hyperdoc. She's amazing. She did this one to help our kids master their 9 times table. And this one I could see really doing independently. She had them explore and watch these videos, learning some tricks. She had them explore some more. She had them explain the trick and how they're going to use that to master it. She has a couple of apply and another apply. But here's what I really like. She has them creating at this point. And this is where I'm so excited to share how kids are using Screencastify for their work. When it comes to showing what you know in that apply piece, the so what, now what? So I know this, now what am I going to do with that? So important to capture kids' voices with this. So I love that Screencastify was a part of this apply section, along with Kahoot games, or even off tech and creating a board game. The last one I want to show you was, I was going in as the instructional tech coach to a 5th grade classroom, and I was trying to teach the kids about Satori. And so I made this very quick Hyperdoc. It was just explore these great resources. What did you notice? What do you like about it? What would you create? Then my explain was just super quick. It was how to log in. You know how those days go, right? Sometimes just logging into something can be challenging. And then I asked them to create, and they were doing this student inventory. Well, I walked around after I got the kids going on this, and they were creating their inventory. I just did this a lesson to teach them the tool, let them explore how to create with Satori. And I come across Jeremiah, and he has his Screencastify going with this lesson. And I said, Jeremiah, what are you doing? And so here you have to see, he sent me his screencast video.
Screencastify on the timeline you told us.
Oh, we might pause a little here. Hopefully he gets going again. But he starts to show us what he's doing with Satori so that he can remember how to create with Satori, which I really thought was just brilliant for him to be able to, without me prompting him, without me telling him to do this, he was able to say, wow, she just taught me this neat tool. I might go home. I might forget this. I'm going to screencast this. And to be honest, I said, oh, do you do this often?
Yeah, so
no. Of course, I pause, and he's, I don't want to miss his voice. He's so sweet. He says, well, if someone is absent today, they might want to see this as well. So on his own, unprompted, you can see on his screen there, this was his first extension that he loaded up. So I was really excited to see that. I actually looked at his drive and saw that he has it loaded with these kinds of tutorials, and it really made me think about students and strategies they have when they're not understanding in class. And as a teacher who works with a lot of AVID classrooms and a lot of students with executive functioning challenges, I'm going to be recommending that they screencast so they have a recollection really quickly about instructions, teacher directions, and beyond what they know or what they're thinking, but how to do something and reminding themselves. So. Holly, I can't hear you. Are you, is it me? There you are.
Next portion is going to be around just 3 ways we really like to use Screencastify in conjunction with Hyperdocs or learning boards or exploration boards. I'm still playing with a new name, but and also with Not. So Lisa's going to start off by talking about one way she loves to use this, and then I will go with the last 2 examples, and we'll be done.
Great. So this is a show what you know bingo board, and this is a text set, and I use this at the apply portion of my Hyperdoc. And I give kids choices. Sometimes I'll limit their choices. Other times I give them the whole board. And Screencastify is definitely a fixture on this board where kids can pick any web tool to show what they know. And that adds this layer of understanding when they have to figure out which web tool is going to exemplify their point in the best way possible. I ask kids to turn their creations in the center. I attach a Google form there. And then I let them see everyone's projects by attaching the spreadsheet there. I could do that with Wakelet now too, now that I'm using that. So that's my one way of really having kids show what they know by using Screencastify and having lots and lots of choice.
Well, we hear you talking a lot about Wakelet, and then we have some people talking about it in the chat, which is great, and everyone's really excited about it and bringing up the founder, one of the founders. So So we are also obsessed with Wakelet, so it's really good to see that you guys are too. So I want to give you a couple examples, and this one is from 2014, and I think it was one of the first examples I saw of someone using Screencastify, and this was as a portfolio and the end of the year kind of reflection on what this, I believe she was 9 or 10. So let me go ahead and share my screen again. And she had made as her end of the year assessment. And so do you see the art portfolio?
Yeah.
Video?
Sorry, I'm on a, yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. And what she had done is go and make on Google Slides kind of all the art projects that she had done. She talked about them. And then she used Screencastify to record herself going through her slides and talking about the art she performed. But I want you to watch something when we watch this. She is not going to read from, like, she does a writing portion of this, but she's not going to read word for word. She's actually just going to start talking to you about the things that she learned from her art portfolio. So you're going to see it comes up, and you're going to see her slides for a second, and you're going to see how she's just using Screencastify to go through her slides. So I'm going to play, start at the right there. You can see the slides, and now she's just going to start talking about them.
Hi, my name is Rachel Shorzda, and today I'm going to be showing you my art portfolio for 2013 through 2014. First, I made a photo mosaic. I love this art project. I took many types of magazines that had different textures or different shades of color red.
So I really love this example because if we were to watch the whole thing, and we have linked it if you wanted to watch it, she really goes through and explains her learning, and she makes her learning and thinking visible for the whole year. Like, how did she really make this? Now, over in the written portion, she says, I used a Mod Podge to glue everything together, but she doesn't talk about like you can hear her passion. Like, I used so many different magazines, and I really love this. And this is just an important step we often forget in those last parts of the school year. And I know when the last parts of the school year came, I was, I'll admit it, sometimes I watched a movie. But really, we can have kids doing this, especially if we have access to one-to-one computers. So I'm going to head over to another example, and this comes from the same year, which is a little embarrassing. I should have more up-to-date ones. But what I did is this is very similar to the one that you're going to see, which is more up-to-date. So we're taking a 5-paragraph essay where this little girl is talking to her mom about not texting while driving. And I did it again later, and we're using Avid strategies of making notes in the margin as we read and what have you. And she made this written thing, and then later I had kids, because I had access to Adobe Spark, take almost the exact same assignment after they did it in Google Docs, and we went through the writing process of it. When they were done, they came and they added it to Adobe Spark, where they can take that 5-paragraph essay and really add the media elements that make it pop, that make the story a little stronger. So same thing, dear mom, driving is illegal in 39 states. California is one of them. And like, she's got like, you want to text while drive, you're going to jail images going with this. And then she goes on to show a car crash before she goes to her next paragraph. And I love this about Adobe Spark. But why am I bringing this up when we're talking about Screencastify? Because here's one of the things that I wasn't able to do often in my early years of teaching. Kids would turn in something like this or something like this, and I wouldn't know what their real thoughts were, what their goal was in writing this. Were they trying to convince their mom of A and B, or was C coming through? And so with Screencastify, they could record the screen and go through this writing piece and say, what I'm really proud of is I really love this sentence right here that I wrote. I'm really proud that I had a crashed car in the middle to really exemplify what I was trying to say. And so they can do a quick Screencastify to tell me what it is they're trying to get across. I can look at their final product, compare that with what they've told me they're trying to get across. And now I'm a better grader of the content. And I think that's an important thing that we often leave out of writing, and something that we can now include using Screencastify. So those are some examples that I really like with Screencastify. I probably would have put that whole writing unit now in a Hyperdoc to start with, and I would have them explore examples, and we would look at like some statistics and talk about statistics, because the kids they're getting better now, but that first one, she said something like there's 1 million people dying, which is not the right statistic. She's using a filler. And so so I think we could do some really cool things with Screencastify with some of these. Oh, we got a dog bark or sneeze. But no. And sorry, she's got a little problem, so I have to make sure that she's okay.
Holly, you have a question on there, and while you're checking that out and thinking, I just wanted to add one last piece to what I had been talking about. You know, you might be looking at these learning boards and Hyperdocs and thinking, how do I have time to do all this and package this and add these layers to this? And first of all, we shared the link for all these examples. And if you like them, you can just go to File and make a copy, and they're yours. And you can edit and revise them to fit the needs of your students and your class. Maybe you just like the structure of it and put your own content in. It's important, though, to notice and know that I don't teach with these every day. There's no way. I save them for when I want the learning to really stick, or I want to really highly engage them, maybe the introduction to a unit. But I tend to, I do like them. And so I start to make them more often when they solve a problem for me in the classroom. And usually my number one problem is, how do I get out from the front of the room so I can work with kids individually or small groups? That's the number one reason why I make them, and do them maybe once a week, twice a week, that kind of amount.
That's something I'd like to get across too, Lisa. I tell people, you know, I come in here and I talk about, if I'm doing a training, a lot about the tools and Chromebooks. But if you were to walk into a classroom in which I am team teaching, I'm not using technology all the time. I'm not. I'm using it a lot more than most people because I'm using it in effective ways, but I'm not using it all the time. So we need to really understand that. Sometimes kids really just need to touch things and get up and whatever. So, so we have ways to connect with us. You probably are connected if you found your way to this this webinar, but Facebook has a great group, the Hyperdoc group, that we've put a link in there. And Lisa, where are you, about 20,000 people now?
We're at 17,000. Yes, about 100 a week are joining. It's the nicest people on social media. So if you're a part of that, we really appreciate you joining in that conversation.
Yes, so please join there. We put the links to our books. We put the link to the Chromebook Infused Classroom online course, which is only open until Sunday, just to give you a little heads up on that. And we just really want to connect. If you have any questions, I will tell you that Facebook group for Hyperdocs, whenever I have a question, I put something in there and people are like, oh, I have that. I've done that. Let me share that. And it's the best. I might also call Lisa all the time too. But anyway, we are so thrilled to have connected with you today. I want to look at some of the comments, but thank you so much for coming, and we hope it's short and sweet and you got something out of it.
It was good to connect with you guys here in the chat.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Lisa and Holly. We will make this webinar available on demand. So if you have some friends who did not get an opportunity to join us, check out the Screencastify Twitter for that link. Also be sure to join us next week for the next installment in the student engagement series, our last webinar, which will go over using video. So if you loved learning more about tools like Flipgrid, Screencastify, etc., to include video, then make sure that you join us. And Eric, you can even find past webinars on the link that I just shared. So please feel free to give it a peruse. Anything that you are interested in, go for it. So thank you again.
I want to say one last thing. If your students want to learn how to make Screencastify, we have a course for students to take and they get a badge. So maybe we can put a link up to that, or we can add it to our resources, but that's really fun too.
Yeah, how can I forget that? Holly's awesome course. I think I have it. Just put the link there. So make sure your students kind of take advantage of that 10 minutes of awesomeness. So it is there. And yeah, unless Lisa or Holly have anything, then that is it for tonight. And I will see you next week. And you can see these awesome ladies as you read their books.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye.